If the price increase and prices were based on how popular a bag is, trust me, it wouldn't be the 24/24s that went up so much in price. Hey guys, my name is G.P.S. and welcome back. Today we'll be discussing two highly requested Hermes topics. One of them is the European Hermes price increase. Yes, in case you've not been aware, Hermes adjusted their prices across Europe at the beginning of January. So today we'll be discussing that, as well as my thoughts on how it's going to impact pricing worldwide. And then we'll also touch on some of the new colors that are launching for Spring/Summer 2021. Let's be honest, most of them are colors that are being relaunched, but we'll be discussing all of it. So if you want to hear my thoughts on both of these topics, then please keep on watching. Let's start with the European price increase, which is a topic that I have been meaning to talk about for, I think, over 3 weeks at this point. But I was waiting to see if I get any more intel into what's going to happen in the US, how this price increase is going to affect the rest of the world, and I have not. So I thought that we should just discuss exactly what happened in Europe, and then based on that predict what might happen in the US, in Asia, and everywhere else in the world. So in case you haven't heard, I mentioned this briefly before, that Hermes did adjust their prices at the beginning of January. Just after Christmas, I started noticing that they slowly started taking pieces off the website, and most people would think that it's just because of the holiday season that people went crazy doing their Christmas shopping online and they turned to the website instead of going to the stores, considering that most stores were closed throughout the month of December. But what was interesting is that right after Christmas, it seemed like that they still had plenty of stock online. It was actually a couple of days later that pieces started disappearing slowly. And then as the new year hit, as January 1st came around, they started slowly putting pieces back up at really slightly increased prices. Some pieces went up as little as just a few euros in price. So for example, the Bastia and the Calvi, I think they were increased between like 4 and 7 euros, which I think wouldn't even be that noticeable for most people. And then the big majority of things were increased by somewhere between 50 and 100 euros, which obviously is not the end of the world, but it's still quite a bit of money. And then the most drastic price increase that I personally noticed was on the 24/24 line. So the small size of the 24/24, the 29 in the original range, went up by 300 euros. And then the larger one, size 35, went up by 400 euros, which to me was actually quite surprising because I never thought that these pieces would have been particularly popular that would have justified this jump in price. Maybe that's the very reason why they went up so much, because they have quite a bit of backstock left. I'm not exactly sure, but I was really surprised that this was the line that they chose to increase by so much. Especially because I think the size that would be most popular, which is the newest size, the Mini 24/24, only actually went up by 50 euros. So it wasn't anywhere near to what the other sizes were increased by. So that was just something interesting to note. But the rest of the pieces were pretty much increased anywhere between 50 to a couple hundred euros. The big majority of things didn't actually exceed a €100 price jump. Obviously, Hermes being the huge global brand that they are, you would assume that they have a more consistent strategy on how they're going to increase their prices worldwide, but that wasn't actually the case this time. So far, the price increase that I tracked was mainly in Europe, and this whole thing went down at the beginning of the month. And thankfully the situation wasn't too drastic, but at this point we have no intel on what's going to happen in the US and how this is going to affect prices elsewhere. But personally, I would be quite surprised if this price adjustment was exclusive to Europe. It's important that I make this clear that everything that I say about the price increase moving forward is just my predictions based on what I saw happening in Europe and based on the fact that I have been through two larger price adjustments, one in 2015 and one in 2019. But I really don't have too much intel at this point, so I don't want to start any panic by saying my thoughts and my opinions. This is definitely not set in stone. This is not an intel. These are just my thoughts and my predictions on how I think it would go down. Because I think it would be quite shocking if they didn't increase prices everywhere else in the world, if they decided to only do it in Europe. So when it comes to price increases in the US, historically they do it in phases. So what they usually do is that they dedicate essentially a month and a half to go through each and every single Hermes métier or category and go from product to product and increase the prices of each one. So let's say they start usually at the beginning or middle of January and they go until the end of February. And they go from one category to another and they slowly increase the price of each piece. So I think if they do it, it's going to be the same sort of system that they implement. And I wouldn't be surprised if they started doing it maybe at the end of Q1, beginning of Q2, or perhaps when technically the old Hermes quota would be up, or the old Hermes semester, which is it's usually at the end of June when Hermes used to start a new period. So maybe that's when they're going to do it. But in my opinion, the price increase will at some point happen in the US. But if it's the same sort of numbers that they use to increase prices in the US that they did in Europe, I really don't think it's going to be that bad of a situation, because as I mentioned, most pieces went up on average between like 50 to 100 euros. So if they use the same metrics to increase prices, or sorry, I should say adjust prices in the US, it will just probably mean that we have to save a little bit more to get the bag of our dreams. And actually, while we are on the topic of bags, I don't actually have any updates on Birkins and Kellys and how much they were increased in price. I mean, I'm filming this in the third week of January, maybe, no, actually the fourth week of January already. And I just got a bag at the end of December. So I think it's going to be a little while until I get another bag offered to me. But if you know anything about prices, if you know how much they were increased by, please again let us know in the comment section so we can learn from one another. I honestly would be really surprised if Birkins and Kellys were subject to a more drastic price increase than any other bags in their portfolio, because you can say a lot about Hermes, but you cannot say that their pricing isn't consistent. Usually all of their prices are based on how much effort, thought, work, and raw materials go into each one of their bags. They're not really based on popularity. If the price increase and prices were based on how popular a bag is, trust me, it wouldn't be the 24/24s that went up so much in price. And now that we have all those ugly numbers out of the way, let's move on to a more fun topic, which is the Spring-Summer 2021 colors. In case you're new to Hermes, you may not know that Hermes introduces some new colors every season that will be offered exclusively for the period of essentially one season or 6 months. That 6 months doesn't usually end and finishes when the seasons do, because Hermes tends to be so behind on production and so slow on releasing bags. You can sometimes pick up seasonal colors a year from when they were supposed to launch, because that's when stores get the shipment that they were promised. So you don't have to worry that you only have 6 months to pick up these pieces, especially now that most stores are closed. Even though they are seasonal, meaning that they're not going to be around forever, they're usually around for a good year, if I want to be honest with you. And it's more important to know about these if you're going to be placing a special order, because special orders, while they do have classic and timeless colors, they're usually very much focused on seasonal shades. But let's start talking about some of the new colors, which we don't have too many of. Hermes is releasing 3 new colors of the season, and then the rest of the colors that they are bringing back are colors that were either around a long time ago and they were archived, and those are being now revitalized, or some colors that have just been sort of mingling around for the past couple of seasons that are being given a bigger role. But the 2 big color families that are definitely getting a huge boost this season are pinks and some reds, as well as yellows and greens. Those are definitely 2 color families that if you love, this upcoming season is going to be your favorite time to visit Hermes. And I think let's start with the yellowish greens, with a shade that I'm personally excited for, and it's not because I would want to pick up something in this color. It's definitely not my cup of tea, but I think it's a color that many will appreciate, and I will be sure to appreciate it from the far, which is Jaune Bourgeon, which is a color that is in the yellow family, but it's definitely very heavily leaning towards being green. It's a dusty lime sort of zest green with the most subtle hint of yellow undertone. And if I want to be really honest with you, it kind of reminds me of the color of avocado. I did this color palette for Instagram. And by the way, if you like any of these color palettes and you want to have a closer look at them, all of them will be on my Instagram where you can check these out. But I did a color palette for Instagram, and when I was going through each and every product that I was going to include, the more I looked at it, the more this color reminded me of the color of avocado, especially because this color is going to be really heavily featured in goatskin. Goatskin is a leather that has quite a heavy sheen to it. So with the sheen and that really, really strong green hue, it kind of reminds me of just an avocado. A lot of people, when this color first was announced, compared this to lime, which is a color that launched a couple of years ago and has been really popular for the past few seasons. But lime, even though you would associate lime with me being more green, the color Lime by Hermes is much more yellow. It's like a really vibrant, saturated yellow with a hint of green. Whereas Jaune Bourgeon is quite the opposite, to be honest with you. It's this really, really beautiful light green with a hint of yellow. So if anything, I think these two names should be swapped. But I think Jaune Bourgeon is going to be an extremely popular color. And if you're hunting for a nice pop of green, one that kind of dances on the fine line of being green and yellow, I think you would really enjoy this. And then the other color family that is being cast a huge role for the coming season is pinks and reds. And while there are only really one color that is new to the family, there are plenty more that are being brought back. And I have no doubt that the crowd pleaser is going to be Rose Sakura, which is a color that I know was almost impossible to get. It's a true unicorn color that people went crazy for when it was first around. And it seems like that there are more and more pieces launching in the color Rose Sakura, which is just the palest sort of milky pink. If you're not usually a fan of the color pink, you will still love this because it's almost a neutral, which just almost like a filter of pink over it. It really is a beautiful color. 5B Pink is also a color that will be around, mainly in Epsom. And then Framboise is a color that I'm pretty excited for. Framboise is this super saturated, rich, deep shade of pink with quite a bit of red in there. It's very different from 5B Pink and Rose Sakura. And the name pretty much sums it up quite well. Framboise obviously means raspberry in French. And this color is the perfect interpretation of the color of freshly picked, organic, juicy raspberries. And then the new color that is being added to the family of pinks and reds is Rouge Cellier, which is actually a new color that is not going to be exclusive to leathers. It's going to be a color that will be around in all of Hermes' métiers. I've already seen some pieces of ready-to-wear in the Hermes equestrian line that are named after this color. And Rouge Cellier is just this really deep shade of sort of aged red wine with quite a bit of a brown undertone to it. It almost looks like I would almost compare it to the color of a red wine stain, one that has been sitting and just drying onto a white tablecloth. It doesn't really remind me of anything else because it's not really a brick color. It's not really a color of a Mediterranean building. It's truly a red with quite a bit of brown underneath it. And I have to tell you that I'm not the biggest fan of this color. It kind of reminds me of a color that was around a couple of years ago called Bordeaux. And Bordeaux was the true color of sort of an immature young red wine, whereas Rouge Cellier is more of an aged and mature color. As I said, it kind of looks like a red wine stain because it looks like something that has sort of oxidized and browned over time. And as you can probably tell, I'm not a huge fan of this color. I think it's It's interesting. I like the combination of the two colors of reds and browns, but there really isn't anything that I could compare it to, and perhaps that's for a reason. I think when I see this color, it doesn't matter what it comes in, it can come in the most modern back shape. It will still convey more of a vintagey feel to me. So a bag that I would absolutely love could be made in this color that I know is a contemporary shape and design, but I will still think that it was made in like the 70s. There is just something about this color, quite similar to box leather, that it doesn't matter what the shape, what the idea is. It will just look kind of old school and vintage to me, which is not a look that I personally appreciate. But if you love a deeper red, you might want to look into this. I'm surprised that this color is actually being launched for spring summer, considering that it's a deeper red, which I would mainly associate with the fall and winter. But let's be honest, with Hermes's timelines and how slow they work, it's probably a color that will come out during fall winter. But if you've been looking for a deep red, this might be one that you want to look into. And then obviously I didn't really talk about two color families, which are blues and true sort of greens, which obviously colors that need to be mentioned because they are colors that tend to be quite popular during spring summer. There really aren't any new blues. There are blues that are being, I wouldn't say brought back, but blues that stuck around from recent seasons. So there's Bleu Brume that is staying around, which is just a frosty, icy baby blue. And then there's also Blue Frida, which personally is my preferred choice. Now, Blue Frida I haven't really seen in bags. I've only seen it in small leather goods and as used as the lining of bags. But I would love to see this color being brought out in bags as well because it's a beautiful saturated just sky blue. I'm a huge fan of this color. So it might be one that you want to put on your wish list, especially if you're looking for a nice poppy piece of SLG. And then there are plenty of greens for you to choose from if you love greens. There are quite a few colors that are being brought back and given more attention to. Bamboo is one of them. Bamboo is a color that was around a long time ago that has been around, I want to say, for the past season, but it's definitely one that will be given a big role for spring summer 2021. And then a color that I think is going to be the winner of the season is Menthe, which means mint in French. And it's a beautiful, cool toned, fresh green. Quite similar to malachite. When I posted about this color on my Instagram, many of you were asking me if it's malachite or if there's any relationship. And they do look quite similar. Malachite is just even more cool toned and it has definitely much more of a gray undertone to it. And then last but not least, I have to touch on some of the neutrals that are coming. There are no new colors being introduced in the neutral family. Your classics will be around, so your golds and your blacks. But there are two, not new colors, but two colors that I have been seeing around that I'm hoping to see more of in the coming season. One of them is sesame, so sesame, and then the other one is caramel. Both of them are quite warm colors. Sesame is just a little bit more of an orangey neutral, if that makes sense. It almost looks like if the color gold and an orange color had a baby. It definitely has a really nice sort of saffrony color to it. Both colors I'm quite excited for, so these are some of the colors that I felt were worth mentioning, but this by no means is an exhaustive list. If you want to learn more about these colors, be sure to follow me on Instagram where I will be posting some color boards. And then I also leave the article that Purse Bob put together because they went through, I think, every single color, whether it's new or it's being relaunched. And they even called out what leather they will be available in. So you can go ahead and check out that article, which will be linked down below. But this pretty much completes my video on the price increase and the new colors launching for spring summer 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear what you guys think about these new colors, as well as of course the price increase. And if you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.